doing it. Welcome to my February webinar, Please Be My Valentine. The title was not taken to be personal, or should not be taken as personal, although it is in a sense personal, but to remind ourselves that that day is coming where we celebrate love in its usually its specific aspects, its personal aspects, and that hopefully that will be a good day for everybody. But we should also recognize that sometimes lurking in the background and sometimes very much in the foreground, the day, Valentine's Day, brings remembrance of love lost or denied, some experiences that we've had along the way, particularly for those of us who are a little bit older, a little further along in life, and who have lost loved ones for one reason or another. The day is not always a particularly, say, just a happy one and just a day of feeling that nice, warm feeling that we call, sometimes we call it a fuzzy feeling, which is a really sweet way of putting it. We think of little stuffed animals and stuff. And think of those, those nice, warm feelings that we get. So tonight I want to talk about love, and I want to talk about it in its specific values and in its general or universal application. Two very different meanings of the word, worth understanding the distinction, I think, in order to help us be able to navigate life with love, but without an attachment that becomes crippling or debilitating and limiting in our capacity to enjoy life and to have a good time. We're going to cover a fair amount of territory with this presentation, I think, if my voice will hold out. It's been a little scratchy lately. Not quite sure why, but anyway, there it is. Maybe just be the dryness. I may be reacting to that. I've noticed when I wake up in the morning, I'm quite dry. Love is, of course, a feeling. We feel love, and we feel it usually about something, usually some object, which could be, in most cases, another person, but it could be a pet, it could be friends and relatives. We can love our house and we can love our rock stars, musicians or any other folks like that, people who are public figures that we don't know personally. So we have the ability to love all kinds of things, and not necessarily that we receive love back. We certainly expect to receive love back from our pets, although I notice that people who have cats have to accept less love probably than those generally speaking who have dogs. It's just the nature of the animal. Dogs tend to be very affectionate. Cats tend to be fairly aloof. And you may get a little bit of personal gratification from the cat, meaning the cat may come up and rub against you or demand to be, scratched or petted a little bit. But then when they're done, they just walk off and tend to leave us behind. So it's kind of oftentimes with a cat, it's kind of a one-way thing. Dogs are much more dependent and really like to have interaction with their masters. And so that qualification or quality is very, very different in the dog. And of course, in our human interactions, we very much hope that love is a reciprocal feeling, that we love each other and we express that to each other in various ways. And one of the things I'm going to talk about tonight is how we express love and how we like to receive love, what kinds of expressions we like to receive, and to do a little check-in and make sure that we are clear about our own needs and how we want love expressed to us, but that we're also clear to others who would love us, that they would be able to express love to us in a way that would be pleasing to us and satisfying to us. Love is a feeling, to be sure, but love is also a need. And, we generally recognize that all children need love in order to thrive, and that children raised in the absence of love often fail to thrive, fail to grow normally. And it may affect not only their physical development, but the development of their personality. And it's possible that they become permanently incapable of really loving someone else because they never got that as a child. Some very I have some serious questions about the ethics, but some experiments were done with chimpanzees. You may be familiar. They were done about a half a century ago, and which they basically raised baby chimpanzees on wire frame monkeys. They're not real mothers, but surrogates. And they could get food from the surrogate, but they didn't get any affection. It didn't move. It was just a wire frame with some fur on it. And it showed that the monkeys raised that way were very isolated and very incapable of social behavior, the kind of social behavior that's so important to monkeys because they live in troops and protect and take care of each other that way collectively. And I personally have difficulty with the ethics of that experiment. I think that was a cruel thing to do. But on the other hand, it's an experiment that gets run inadvertently with people, all too often, in people that grow up in homes where where there may be very little affection and very little, demonstration that the child really matters and is understood and responded to, in ways that we would say we're loving, we're caring for the child, we're nurturing to the child. And we tend to throw all of those things in together, the loving, caring, and nurturing, behaviors. So there's very much a real need in people. And for most adults, that need persists. That is, we still need to feel that we are loved, we are cared for by others, and that the lack of that or the loss of love can be very, very devastating. That's often true, particularly for elderly people, longtime married couples. When one person dies, the other one is left to go on. And, so many of them have family and everything that make up for that loss to a considerable degree. But oftentimes they don't, and people often wind up very isolated. And it actually can affect their health and their longevity. They can fade away rather quickly after a loved one dies. I'm sure many of you have had experience with that, seeing grandparents pass away. So this need is a very real thing within us, and it's a very physiological thing, as well as the emotional component of it. It's a very physiological thing. In our relationships, then, we often get into difficulties because we don't speak the same languages as those who might be loving us or want to love us. And it's a very interesting problem. Some years ago, a book was written called The 5 Languages of Love. And it's a marvelous analysis of how we express love and how we like to receive love. And I always say it that way. The book, I think, does a fair emphasis of this too. But I always like to say give and receive, because those two things are not necessarily the same for anyone, even for one person. So what are the 5 languages? I'll just go through it with you, and then you'll see what I mean about giving and receiving. Number 1, of course, is words of affection and appreciation. So words are very important. Those 3-word sentence, I love you, often doesn't come out of a person's mouth very often or very readily. And that may just be who they are. And there may be reasons for that, but they may not do that very much. And so, they may find that their loving relationships are sometimes kind of strained or wanting because the person that they love doesn't feel like they receive the message of loving from that person. So words of affection, appreciation are often ranked very high in couples, but not always. And sometimes it's made up for by nonverbal communication, other things that people do that indicate that they're in tune, that they're connected or resonating with one another, and that they're feeling very, good and very positive about the other person, but not necessarily saying the words "I love you" very often. Trying to keep my voice going here. The second one on the list are deeds. Deeds, things we do, things we do for others or appreciate having them do for us. Um, and so you can think of them as acts also. That's another way of saying it. So words and then acts, the things that we do. And it can be as mundane as taking out the garbage or doing the dishes or drying the dishes and putting them away. Or it could be major things that we do. And oftentimes, in terms of expressing love, we tend to get into routines about these kinds of things, but it's often very nice if we change it up a little bit and try doing something different for our loved ones, just so that they notice that we are actually doing things for them. And you'll see in books and movies, a lot of times the person say, "Oh, you don't do things for me," and then the person say, "What do you mean I do?" And then they list the things that they see themselves doing that are their expressions of love, even though they may be very mundane things. Um, and or they may be very profound things too, of course, but particularly just the routine stuff. But these are acts of love, and they can be very important communication. But if you don't appreciate them, then it creates a discord in a couple. And so it's important to notice, and it's important even to talk to your partner and see whether those things that they're doing that are on their list matter to them, that they feel like those are expressions of love. The third thing on the list is gifts. Just giving stuff to another person, things we give or like to receive. Um, and for many people, giving gifts is a very special thing. And they try to pick out things that they believe the other person would really like. And most people I know, compared to me, seem to be pretty good at picking out gifts. I am one of the worst people on earth when it comes to picking out gifts. And I've had many very bad experiences of giving people gifts and watching their reaction and then kind of realizing like, I just I never recognize what it is that somebody would probably like. And I'm always amazed when people can give me something that I would really appreciate. Um, P.S. Technology, you're safe. Giving me technology is always a good thing. Anyway, gifts are the third one. The fourth and fifth are usually highly ranked by people. One is quality time. And in couple relationships, male-female relationships, the fifth one, physical contact and quality time, are the two that are often not in sync. Trying to do it there. I sort of got it. That are not in direct relationship. Women tend to prefer quality time over physical contact. It doesn't mean they don't like physical contact. It's just quality time is really important and often a prerequisite for physical contact. Whereas for men, physical contact, physical expressions of affection rank very high. And quality time is like, well, yeah, if I have to, it's like a price I got to pay. I think, I'd like to think, I don't have data, that I'd like to think that today men recognize the importance of quality time, and that women recognize the importance of physical contact and are more open, shall we say, to that experience. Um, but I don't have hard data on that. So anyway, those are the 5 words, deeds, or acts: gifts, quality time, and physical contact. And if you'd like to make a little note, I can give you an exercise in case you have a significant other. And it doesn't have to be profound. It could even be a child or a sibling, or even somebody you're not that close to, if you want to just have fun with the exercise and just see how this works. But the exercise is very simple. What you do is you, on a piece of paper, you make 2 columns. And the first column can be ways in which you like to express love. And you got to just list the 5 qualities in order: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, most important, least important. And then in the second column, you list ways in which you like to receive love. Just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the order in which most important to least important. And then to complete the exercise, you can do this just for yourself, of course, but to really complete the exercise, you do this with another person. And then you talk about what you like to give as expressions of love. And then you look at the person's list, how they like to receive love. One of the things I've had people do in couples therapy, if you will, is to actually do this exercise twice. The first one is the ways in which I like to express love. And then below that, the 5 ways that I think my partner likes to express love, the way you think they like to. And then the other column is ways I like to receive love. And then guess ways in which your partner likes to receive love. And then see whether you guess correctly what the other person thinks about you and for themselves. So it's a very interesting exercise. You can do that sort of double exercise. And it's fun to guess what your partner thinks. And it's sometimes quite a surprise. I've seen many couples make significant differences in the lists, and that's something to talk about. There's no rules about this, by the way, in terms of which are more important. It's up to the individual. But for some people, for instance, quality time tends to be very important. But there's some people it's not that important, that they're more independent in their functioning. Quality time is not a really important thing. And they may be very much just into words and deeds. And that may be the 2 big ones for them. And then say physical contact, and then the other 2. And so it can be quite a surprise, and the surprises are fun because then you get to really learn more about the other person. So it's a nice little exercise you can do. When we talk about love, we often speak of it in terms of an object. We love someone or something. And it can be very much an object. It's objectified love. And there's nothing really wrong with that. It's the nature of having a feeling. It's got to be directed towards something and having a need. But when we objectify love like that, what we're doing is creating a situation that, just a situation we call dependence. That is, our love is dependent on the object. And the object has to either do certain things or respond in certain ways in order for us to feel like our love is being reciprocated, our love is being accepted and honored and cherished. and that then typically that they give back to us, unless it's one of those objects that can't give back or won't give back. Um, so that is the more specific value of love. That love is a feeling, that love is a need that we have, and that specific people or things are there to meet that kind of need. And then if we don't have that, we feel a lack. And it can be a very uncomfortable thing. It can be very, very painful for us to feel like our love is not being reciprocated, our love is not being appreciated and accepted. Another aspect of this that I found very common in working with couples, or actually even in working with individuals, but talking about their relationships, is that they have a very hard time talking about their needs. As a society, we are, in a sense, trained not to recognize our needs. And so we just have feelings, and we have feelings of lack sometimes, but we don't understand that we have a need for love, for instance, and that we're maybe missing some of that, and then develop strategies that can meet those needs. When we don't recognize our needs, our strategies are often ineffective because we're not aware of our target. We're not aware of what our goal truly is. And so we strive to meet our needs, but we don't know what they are. We're not conscious of what they are. And so we kind of flounder in the world and reach out to others, but awkwardly at times because we're just lost. We don't really know where we're at. And so it's very important that we develop the capacity to actually talk about our needs, which means to recognize our needs and to be able to express them. And I, again, don't have hard statistics, but I've generally been of the impression that people do better today than they did when I was much younger at expressing their needs and letting others know what they need. And that's not making demands, because most people don't respond well to demands, but just gently suggesting or guiding people to give them what they need. And, sometimes it comes out in kind of a rough way. You don't listen to me, instead of saying, I really need you to listen to me now because I'm really hurting. And I need, that to know that I'm communicating with somebody, with you right now. And so the way we go about expressing those needs is very important. And it's one of the things that I sometimes wind up helping people with when I'm doing counseling. Helping people with their well-being is just to help them recognize what it is that they need and how to ask for it. Because most of us really don't do that good a job. We really don't do that good a job of asking for things to meet our needs. So I've been talking a great deal about love in its specific sense. It's directed at objects, and hopefully getting back from our love objects, our significant others, the caring and the attention and the awareness of us that all of us really need. But I'd like to turn now to universal love, the universal aspect of love, and to step into a different realm. And just recently, a client shared with me a story of their own experience of that. It happened very spontaneously. And I'd like to just read you a little bit about what they said. I've edited this just a little bit to make it more less individual to the person, and I hope that goes down okay. This person writes, a few days ago, I felt a sudden surge of what I might call love. Then in my morning meditation, I felt the same quality. I began to direct the love to my small self. That's the ego. Inviting it into my awareness without judgment about it, which is something you've heard from me many times if you've been attending my webinars or having consultations. I just thanked it for showing up. Then it vanished instantly, leaving nothing or only a warm silence. I love that phrase, a warm silence. That's a beautiful description of that state. There was no me who was watching the love inside me either. And there was no me doing it. This feeling of love came many times during this meditation. I remember feeling this kind of love when I was a schoolboy. Unfortunately, as I grew up, I became more judgmental and critical towards everything, including myself. Now, during my meditation, I thought I was in the right position to observe, quote, something inside me that wanted to love. I knew that I needed to be gentle with myself, another great phrase, gentle with myself, and that it was okay to do so. This clear experience of love was only on that day, but my attitude towards myself and others was changed. When I received the webinar email about Valentine's Day, that is about this webinar, because of the experience mentioned above, I thought it would be useful and relevant to go back to look further at loving myself and others. Hopefully, if I can really love myself, I can allow myself to really love others and everything, and vice versa. I thought that was a really beautiful description, both of the relative value of love, that is love directed to the self, and of the universal value of love, that state, not a feeling, but a state of functioning of this nervous system where, what was the phrase? A warm silence, where there was a warm silence. That quality of love was just there, and that everything was loved in that state of awareness, that state of style of functioning of the nervous system. So it is a nice introduction to that concept that you might say more subtle than that love which is directed to objects, and which ultimately, as Marcy explained to us long, long ago, is directed to ourself. On the relative level, we can transcend that and have a much more universal experience, completely universal experience, not just much more, a completely universal experience where everything is loved in a state of being, in a state of well-being, in a state of bliss. Recent experiences on the Invincible America Assembly have discussed bliss quite a bit. And I was very pleased to hear that instead of the descriptions being of great, overwhelming, they often say tidal waves of bliss, that the experiences were much quieter, much subtler, much more that warm silence, that state of being, which is lively and yet non-moving and non-specific. And we don't need an object for it to happen. It's just us. It's the state of our awareness. And it's a very beautiful state and a very special kind of experience. And I hope that when we do our group clearing session here in just a few minutes, that a lot of people are able to get onto that state, which is beyond loving specific things and being dependent on them, and in just that self-referral state of being oneself and appreciating anything and everything, and just appreciating being, just existence itself in that beautiful, loving, silent way. So I'm going to end the presentation here and see if there are any questions. You can pop them into the chat or into the Q&A. So I'll give you a moment to try to figure out how to do that. Most of us don't do it on Zoom very often, so we forget where the where the little things are, and we need a few moments to type. And while you're doing that, I can just announce that our next webinar is going to be on March 8th, February having 28 days. The days come up the same in March. So it'll again be on March 8th, the second Tuesday. And I think I'm going to do it. On what to do when it just hurts too much. Most of us do not have too many of those days, but there's been a lot going on in the world lately. I know many people have either lost people recently, or people have been very ill and that sort of thing. And so there's been quite a bit of pain for a lot of people. So the webinar, I think, will be valuable, even if you have not had a terrible pain, a terrible bad feeling. We call them bad feelings because they hurt, they're uncomfortable. So we're gonna do our webinar on how to handle intense feelings. So I saw one comment come in. Very good. I'm not sure what to say other than thank you. Very good. Okay.